Welcome to the Anxiety at Work podcast. I'm Chester Elton, and this is my co-author and dear friend, Adrienne Gostick.
We hope that the time you're going to spend with us will help remove the stigma of anxiety and mental health in the workplace and your personal life. We invite experts in the world of work and life and wellness to give us ideas and, most importantly, tools to deal with anxiety in our world.
And special thanks to our sponsor, Life Guides. Life Guides offers a community of trained and certified guides who provide guidance in more than 400 topics of personal growth, lifelong learning, and life challenges. By providing employees with experienced and empathetic support across a broad range of everyday life events, employees lead happier and more productive lives at home and at work. Their mission is to bring awareness and have these life guides to impact the lives of over 1 billion people in the next 15 years. You know, Life Guides is modernizing human support and human connection, which is foundational to well-being. Well, for listening to our podcast today, you can get 2 months of free access for your team today with the code 2422. That's 2422 at checkout. Pretty good deal. Well, our guest today is our friend Nicole Steck, Director of Wellbeing at Banner Health. Nicole is responsible for designing and directing the employee well-being strategy for more than 55,000 team members at Arizona's largest employer. She develops and implements programs to address holistic well-being, including physical, emotional, intellectual, and financial pillars. She also provides consulting services and gives speeches to employers and medical providers on wellness strategy and population health management. Nicole has an undergraduate degree in kinesiology from USC and a master's degrees, plural, right, in public health and business administration. And,
okay, I got it. She's an overachiever. I got it.
Yeah, and in her spare time, she jumps into podcasts like ours, right? So, Nicole, we're so delighted to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Nicole. We're so excited to have you on. I was on a panel with you not long ago, and I was really impressed by your expertise in this area. And so just as background for everybody, you're a certified wellness practitioner. You help staff members in probably what the highest stress industry there is right now. You're certainly qualified to walk us through what you're seeing in wellness at a high level, especially mental health, which is what we're talking about. So what's new and what's changing with wellness with the pandemic?
Happy to be here and share with you what we've been seeing in the recent couple of years that we've been going through the pandemic. It's interesting that you say high level in wellness, but I also think of high level wellness, which is more than just the absence of disease and really the focus on the mind, body, and spirit of an individual. And I think what we've really seen in the last couple of years is really this focus on this holistic approach to wellness for all of our team members. More specifically within the pandemic, there have been a couple of areas that have kind of come to the surface of just really that focus that we need to have on mental health, as well as just recognizing the impacts of social isolation. Specifically talking about mental health at Banner, in the last couple of years, we've put in a number of initiatives to really drive awareness for mental health. Specifically, we've launched a mental health awareness campaign where we've certified more than 200 of our leaders and well-being champions in mental health first aid, and leaned upon these leaders as well as our well-being team to share mental health awareness training across the system to all of our team members, where we talk about what is mental illness, what are the signs to look for in somebody that might be struggling, how do we approach that person to help get them to the resources that are available to them, and really create this culture of caring, and really demonstrating that we're here for each other as fellow team members at Banner, and also helping to destigmatize mental health at the same time. Another effort, when we look at kind of that social dimension of well-being, is we've all experienced social isolation to some degree over the last 2 years going through the pandemic. For myself, as well as thousands of my other colleagues, we've been shifted to 100% remote work where we don't get to engage with one another every day. But then we have, tens of thousands of our fellow team members that are out there in our acute care facilities supporting our communities and, getting us through this global pandemic. And so what we've done, in the last couple of years is we've shifted obviously to a virtual world, trying to bring our team members together through challenges, through webinars, through our team member resource groups in a virtual manner. But what we're really looking forward to in the near future is, having more of an on-site presence and really being able to gather in person for events and our step challenges and all that fun stuff, to really build relationships again, because that's such an important component to our well-being.
It's so interesting you talk about, that isolation, and more there's talk about that, about how that really is. I mean, we're social animals and we want to get together, and you're looking forward to those challenges and so on. One of the things that you did that I think was really terrific is this on-site counseling. This idea that you've got somebody right there, right now. Now, that's not the champions. That's not the well-being champions. Those are certified professionals that you have right on site for people. How did you come to that conclusion and get that through to make sure that people have that one-on-one counseling right on campus?
Yeah, happy to share with you a little bit about that background and story. Yes, we implemented on-site counselors, which are mental health clinicians, in all 29 of our hospitals early last year in 2021. What led up to that decision was, as we went through the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, the majority of our system experienced a surge over the summer of 2020. And as we were coming down from that surge, we saw, projections coming for the winter of that year were going to be much worse than what we had experienced over the summer. At that point in time, we had thousands of team members who were tired and exhausted. We also had leaders that were tired and exhausted, and we couldn't keep asking more of them to do something. Here's a resource, go to it. Nobody had the time or even the energy to do some of those things. And what more could be valuable than bringing that resource to them? And so in meeting with, senior leaders within our organization, specific, senior leaders, our chief medical officer from our behavioral health hospital, really looking at kind of the mental component of really supporting our team members, we agreed that this would be the next move to help support our team members through the pandemic. And since implementing that in March of 2021, we've actually impacted over 15,000 of our team members in 10 months. And just through one-on-one, they're engaging our team members in one-on-one support. Also, they provide, they come to, team huddles and do a mindfulness exercise with them. They'll also provide, some short classes on resiliency practices or support groups. They provide a number of key services that our leaders in the last, I'd say, really 6 months, we've really seen our leaders begin to ingrain and embed these counselors in the work that they're doing with their teams, because we all need some of that support. And so that's been really just a phenomenal, transformation, I think, of our organization, that this has become embedded within our facilities. And we've also done it on a virtual level for our corporate and ambulatory team members. So we have it obviously in our hospitals, and that's one thing, but we have hundreds of ambulatory facilities as well as team members that are at home. And so we also created a virtual counselor component that's available almost on demand for our team members in those settings. So if they needed to seek support, they would be able to have that resource as well. And so that's just been, it's been wonderful. We've seen it grow, and we're continuing to look to keep this as a part of our program.
Yeah, it's so innovative and so forward thinking as well. And it does beg the question then, because I think a lot of our listeners would love to do more around wellness in their teams or organizations, but they have no idea where to even begin to get senior level support. Obviously, you did here. So how are you, not first off getting that support, but also how are you measuring what you're doing so you get that C-level buy-in?
No, great question. Looking back at even before the pandemic, so we actually launched our new holistic well-being strategy in January of 2020. Little did we know that we'd be facing a global pandemic 2 months later. And since then, we've made a number of changes within our overall strategy and design. But I think they've all been really for the positive. I think, even the counselors, that component of it, that was definitely something I thought always long-term we'd love to have. But a pandemic obviously expedited that offering within our strategy. When we look at metrics and items that we're kind of tracking over these first few years, is really trying to build awareness and engagement in these offerings. Those are some of the key things before we can really look at maybe long-term health outcomes or retention efforts. So what we've been using within our wellness platform is we track overall enrollment and engagement within our offerings. And so in less than 3 years, we've enrolled over 55% of our team members. And so we're getting up to almost 2/3 of our organization is at least accessing our services in our platform. But then In addition to that, we have over 50% engagement on a weekly basis within those resources, whether it's doing a mindfulness exercise through our mindfulness app, or maybe it's tracking their steps, or maybe it's watching one of our videos on resiliency or coping mechanisms. It could be a number of those things, but we're really tracking, overall engagement within our program. We also are looking at our annual employee survey, where we've created a question about well-being within the organization, but then also we do an annual wellness survey too, to really track our efforts within our strategy, more specifically, the satisfaction with what we're offering, what areas or gaps do we have in our our program offerings, to make sure that we're hearing our team members. And so those are some of the key things. I think long-term we'll begin to really analyze our medical claim data across our engagement data to look and see what changes we're seeing over time. We did it for 2020, and we did see those that were engaged in the program were more likely to access preventative care. They were, going to see, getting their PCP wellness exam. They weren't as likely to use the ED, emergency department, and some of those other services. And so they did cost less, but, we want to see that over several years' time to really demonstrate, value on our program.
So here's what's so great that I love that you just talked about is that measurement piece. Because so often people are saying, how do I get this into my organization? What's the benefit? I've even had organizations say, well, take a look and see how much you're spending on prescriptions for antidepressants and so on. And is that going up or down? And by the way, for our listeners, when she's saying there's 50% engagement on a weekly basis, most EAP programs, the participation is somewhere between 3 and 5%. So the fact that you're getting 50% of people say, hey, that's only half. By the way, those are spectacular numbers. Those aren't just good. Those are spectacular. So along all that, where can we find more about your work, Nicole? Where would you send people to learn more about how they can do what you're doing?
Yeah, I think if more specifically regarding what we're doing at Banner, you can definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always trying to share some of the efforts and the work that we've been doing in our space. You can also go to bannerhealth.com. There's an employees section on there that you can click on, and you can review our benefits, well-being, and some of the efforts that are found in there for our external customer or for potential hires that are interested in working for Banner Health. Okay, so nuts and bolts. What are 2 or 3 things? If somebody in their organization, they don't have a lot of this stuff, they want to get started, what are 2 or 3, simple ways that you can say, hey, here's where you can get started to build that momentum? Yeah, I think one of the first things I would do is to really find a few key stakeholders, and also kind of look around your organization for some of those champions that might help to build that case study for you. I think having some sort of senior leadership buy-in, whether it's your HR executive, maybe it's your COO. It could be a number of individuals at the level, but working with one of them, and also looking at other leaders across the organization. I think when we look at when I've built committees, steering committees for different organizations, we like to have a diverse, background of, different departments and teams, and also different levels. Maybe one's you have a frontline worker, but then you have a mid-level manager, and then you have a senior leader. Is really taking in those different perspectives to really identify what are the key objectives that you want to really address for your organization. So getting that core team together. And then the next step is to really determine what is it that you want to focus on this year. Make it simple. Maybe it is mental health awareness. Maybe it's doing a dive into looking at what are your mental health resources you have, what's missing, and how can you communicate what you have to your teams. And so that kind of set those goals, and then build a simple plan and really go forward with that. Because I think a lot of organizations already have some of the resources they need. They just need to be able to showcase them.
I love that idea. Yeah, using what's already out there, but just promoting it better. I love that idea. Okay, so I want to turn to the future for a minute here, because use your crystal ball, and you do speeches on this too to trade organizations. What do you think the future of well-being will be for all of us in business 2 years, 5 years down the road? Where do you think this wellness movement is heading?
I think of a couple of things. I think, one I've already hit on, but is this continued focus on this holistic approach to the individual, is that it's not just the individual's physical health or their own individual mental health. It's really looking at going into those environmental supports. How is the organization building wellness into the organization, and being really intentional about that, whether it's their operational practices, or it's their routines, or it's their physical environments. How are they weaving wellness into those spaces? Because I think that, there's only so much an individual can control, but I think an organization we know the organization can have a huge impact on an individual's health, because we spend 40, maybe 50, 60 hours within our workplace, and during the work week of our adult lives. That's the majority of our life is spent at work as an adult. So how does the workplace build the environment that helps to support wellness? And that's, again, being really intentional about the routines, the practices, the environment. And I think for wellness teams, I think they also, what we've found success in at Banner is really collaborating with other teams within the organization to do wellness, because it's not just our team that does wellness. We look at our diversity and inclusion team. They do wellness. We look at our development team. They do wellness. They're all contributing to the well-being of our team members. And how do we work together to present the same message that we're taking care of you as our team member? And so I think more collaboration within the organization, and that's, again, part of weaving it in. So I think that's where I see it moving for organizations in the future.
As you're talking, I'm thinking this is the safety movement years ago, right? Everybody's keeping everybody else safe. Now it's everybody keeping everybody else well. And it's brilliant that you got all this collaboration going. We're talking with our wonderful guest, Nicole Steck. She's the Director of Wellbeing at Banner Health. 55,000 team members. Follow her on LinkedIn and tune into Banner Health if you want to see it done right. We always ask our guests, okay, that's great, the big picture. And I know this is just a podcast. You can't see Nicole. Wonderful smile, clearly in good mental health, at least at this moment, right? So what are some of the things that you do personally to stay in good mental health? What are some of your rituals?
One of the key things, and I probably sound like a typical wellness person, but exercise is so important for me. I even if it's not my every, normal day, 45, 60-minute workout, if I can take 15, 20 minutes between meetings to go out and walk and get some sort of movement going, I know I'm going to feel better and be more energized and more present in the upcoming meeting for the day. And I definitely fall back on exercise as one of my key components to my own regimen. When I think during my workday, some of the successful tactics I've put in, I like to have block time, whether it's 1 to 2 hours most days of the week, to really create some focused time on work. It's easy to get involved in meetings throughout the day and be pulled in, but it's really making that time to focus a priority. It helps keep me pretty scheduled and set on, meeting the deadlines that I have for my organization. And so I think that's one of the key things I do during the workday.
45-minute to 60-minute workouts. Jess, have you ever worked out that long? Cumulatively last year?
Yeah,
did you?
I have a tough time getting 45 minutes in a row of sleep, let alone exercise. But thanks for asking, Adrian. I really appreciate it.
That's awesome. Hey, this has been such a great conversation, Nicole. You had a couple of takeaways for everybody to take away today for our listeners. What would you say?
I've already hit on it, but I'll hit on it again, is that the holistic approach to well-being, and it's not just helping your employees exercise more, or maybe it is seek out counseling. It's also, what are you doing within the workplace to create, healthy work relationships, also support, the environment, and to build practices that really stress your employees' well-being. So that holistic approach. And then I think mental health is really on the radar for everybody right now. And so what are some ways to really make that simplified for the employee to get access to? Because as we know, that there's a stigma that exists for many people around mental health. And so how do we make it easier and remove the barriers is key to helping them get that support.
Wonderful. Well, listen, you've been a spectacular guest. Thank you so much for your time and your insights and your expertise. Again, follow Nicole on LinkedIn. She's putting all kinds of great stuff out there. And of course, tune into Banner Health. We love talking to organizations that care so much about their people that you've made this part of your culture. I love that. You've got champions, you've got committees, you've got everybody participating to keep everybody safe. So thanks again so much for being on our podcast.
Thank you.
Couldn't have been more delightful. Couldn't have been more insightful. Nicole Steck, Banner Health. Tell me, what were some of your key takeaways, Adrian? Because I know you take way more notes than I do.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but I think, first and foremost, thinking about wellness, and this is a healthcare person. You're thinking about wellness not as an absence of disease, but really thinking about the mind, body, and the spirit of people. And thinking about this holistically is a really powerful way to begin this thought and how we build wellness in our team.
Yeah, I was just so impressed on how she gets so many people involved. Look, get your key sponsors, always really important. And then the committees, where they can be some frontline people, some remote working people, and so on. Get everybody's voice heard, get that buy-in. And then, what did she say? They certified like 200
first aid mental health leaders. Now, I got certified once in regular first aid, and I felt like, if somebody would approach me, first aid, I would have said, no, you need to find somebody who actually knows what they're doing. There's actually a lot we can do within a few hours when we certify somebody in mental health first aid to actually be of help.
Yeah. Instead of saying, I'm not. I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express, though, and I slept well. Yeah. This idea of community, I'll tell you, it really struck me as we were talking about, it's everybody's job to look out for mental health. And it just really struck me at that moment that how many times have we heard that in organizations for safety? Slips and falls and, pick up the garbage and make sure the lights are on. And we want to send everybody home with all 10 fingers and all 10 toes. Isn't it interesting? And hopefully, because you and I talk about this all the time, is this just going to be a moment in time? Once all the restrictions are lifted and the mandates and so on, is this going to go by the wayside like so many other initiatives that we hoped would take root? I hope not. And if you can make it a part of your culture like they've done at Banner Health, we're all a part of the solution. I think your odds are better. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why, when we asked, how do you get buy-in for this? She talked about measurement. What matters most to your organization? Well, by the way, healthcare costs are exorbitant for every organization. And she says we've tied it to that. We know our people that are engaged in these wellness programs have lower usage of many of the healthcare, services that we're offering, as well as, simple things that you can start with, like tracking engagement of are people using this, etc. And I also loved her steps of how you get started. You asked that question of, okay, so where do we begin? Well, first thing was look for some champions, right? Above and on all throughout the organization.
And then she asked the question, like, what is it you really want to do? Pick one thing, right? Start with that one thing. Lastly, for me, was just her participation. And I know we made a fuss over this, when she was on with us, but 55%, participation and 50% weekly. And they've clearly created a safe place for people to go, and having on-site counselors and on. Gosh, they've looked at this from every different aspect, every facet of mental health, really to be lauded. And isn't it wonderful that we got one of the chief architects to come share all that with us on our podcast today?
It really is. And people may go, 55, come on, they can get higher than that. By the way, this is healthcare. They're extremely busy. And by the way, they're also some of the most resilient people on the planet. You think about getting through medical school. You think about getting through nursing school. It's hard. It is very hard to get some of these, these certifications that these people have. They're some of the most resilient people on the planet, and we're burning them out.
Right.
And so, and they're also very busy. So to get 55% of people on a weekly basis using some of these programs shows the efficacy of what they're doing.
Yeah. One I always say this one last thing, and then I've always got one last thing. We asked her about her personal rituals. When she said, I've got this block time, I thought she was going to say, I'm blocking out time just for me to go for a walk. And so on. She said, no, I have block time to get my work done. Yeah. And I thought that was brilliant because, we can all go meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting and never block out that time to actually get work done, which at the end of the day, we know that if I feel like I've accomplished something during the day, I'm in a much better mental state of mind. So really
Absolutely.
Great insights.
Oh, it really was. And so we hope you felt like you accomplished something by listening in today. We want to thank our producer, Brent Klein, to Christy Lawrence, who helps us find amazing guests like Nicole, and to all of you who listened in. And don't forget, join our community at WeThriveTogether.global and pick up a copy of Anxiety at Work, our latest book from HarperCollins.
Yeah, and if you've enjoyed the podcast, please share it with someone. Give us a rating. That always helps us to get the message out. Be a part of the solution. Let's get a community here that's really looking out for each other. And share our podcast and share your concern and look out for your neighbors. Well, we really appreciate you tuning in. I'm Chester. That's Adrian, even though you can't see him. He looks great. And we hope you'll tune in again with us next week as we talk more about mental health and anxiety at work.